discussion. This is what we came here for.
Okay. So welcome everybody. Our session is about Power BI cheat sheet explained. We already handed them out to you. Will you already see this before today? Okay, that's good. The cheat sheet is actually something Dave started. So
yeah, I think it's maybe 2 years ago. We from Macaw, we provide a lot of trainings, also in Power BI, and for our attendees, I started to sum up the best practices, like the things that you need to remember. And I provided it to the attendees, and then I thought, okay, well, why don't we share this with the broader audience? So at first it was on the internet, behind the registration portal, and then marketing was fine because all the leads they were coming in, of course. But then we said, no, we don't want that. We want it just a community thing. Just send it to a wider audience. So it's now free to download, no registration, and free to share. And remember, it's a community-driven cheat sheet. So if you think tomorrow, hey, this could be on the cheat sheet, that's a good attribution. Don't hesitate to ping us, and we'll add it.
yeah. So first of all, of course, we'd like to thank all the sponsors for making this event available and for providing us a beer. Really like it. So that's really good. Thanks to all of them. Of course, we want to be here next year as well.
And if you want to tweet about this or put it on Instagram or whatever, don't forget the hashtag DataGrillen and maybe Power BI cheat sheet.
Yeah.
And also, before we forget to mention, we would like this to be really interactive.
Yeah.
It's like almost a 1 hour, 50-minute training workshop for you. We'll from start to end, we'll create a Power BI solution. If you have at any moment a question, just raise your hand or shout Dave or Mark, and we'll get into it.
And we like to be interrupted because we're Dutch. So,
yeah.
So that's all. And in the end, maybe the best part of this session, we will have a short discussion about what's the best questions which were asked. And the 3 best ones, we will provide like a big, what do you call it? I don't know if it's the English word, call, whatever it is. Mug. A big mug with a Power BI logo on it, Power Beer. So we have 3 of them. So the best questions, we provide one. So let's do a short introduction. Dave, who are you?
Yeah, so this is me. You can find me on social media, and I have my own blog on moderndata.ai. I'm a Power BI expert, and I know quite a lot about the surrounding data services in Azure, and I used to do on-premises, but now I stopped. Don't ask me anything about integration services or something. I do know a lot about Azure, the Databricks, machine learning services, data factory, so that's also interesting.
Yep. Great.
And then Mark?
Yeah. My name is Mark. We both work at the same company in Macaw. I joined there 1.5 years ago, maybe. Almost 2. My main focus is Power BI. I only do Power BI actually. Where Dave is more like all around and more like a solution architect. I'm just Power BI only. So if it is about Power BI, ask me anything. Doesn't matter what. But still, I don't like on-premise. So.
and Mark doesn't like pie charts.
No, we'll come back to that later, probably.
Okay.
Don't use bar charts, of course. So, what they've already told, the Power BI cheat sheet, actually, we need to change that number because it's not correct anymore. At this moment, we have.
There's more?
There's more, yes. At this moment, we have over 16,000 shares all around the world. And actually, the first share, when we first put it online, we had something around, was it 200 shares, which was not that much. But luckily, guy in the cube, probably we all know him, mentioned the Power BI cheat sheet in one of his videos, and that was where it went viral because within 2 weeks we had over 7,000 downloads from the Power BI cheat sheet. As Dave already said, it's more like really a community thing. You can see on the map that it's just all around the world actually. So we're really proud of that. And yeah,
I think we should create a slide about how many times we update it as well, because
yeah.
this copy, we're glad to share it, but actually I think maybe in the next month, this month, it will be old, because we will change it. And not all of it, of course. On this one we have little labels for which things we changed compared to the previous version. We already got a list of 5 or 10 things that we will add in the next version. So keep in mind, watch our Twitter and LinkedIn. We will share the link of the new version, and there's the download link is on the page as well.
On the right top you will see the download link and also the month of this version. Really bad, we forgot to change it before we printed the new one.
Yeah, so this is actually the May version.
Yeah. So enough about slides, all demos from here. So from here on we're going to start to create an end-to-end Power BI solution. And let's first move to the prep file, because what they've already mentioned, I hate pie charts. So we created a report, and be honest, who of you created a report like this in the past? Maybe still does it?
Everybody's scared to acknowledge. But there's the obvious bad thing is the background. I don't know, some people like this, but for BI people, this not really improves the readability of the report.
Unfortunately, a lot of times we still see this happening at our clients, and people are, yeah, I can do Power BI, and they create something crap like this. And okay, let's tell you more about the pie chart shit. Looking at the pie chart, I'm always like, what the hell am I looking at? What is this? What's it representing? What numbers am I looking at? Which one's bigger? The dark blue, the light blue? I have no idea. So, if you want to show something about the distribution between numbers, I just put it in a bar chart or a column chart or whatever. It doesn't matter, but not a pie chart. Never use it.
What about 2 or less values?
2 or less values. Okay,
actually,
I was gonna say like because you say never, and I wouldn't say never, like rarely, because I also hate them. I hate pie charts, but I do think that like male, female, yes, no is really good, especially if you have like a small one in the corner. It's really nice as like a slicer that also shows you the data distribution.
But how about if you share, or if you want to show something about female, male, and you want to know the actual number, because you have no idea about the actual numbers.
You can turn on the data label.
Yeah, but then you need to hover over it or directly read what it's about. If you're just looking at the chart, your first opinion is not telling you anything about what this chart is saying.
The data label sits inside of it though, right?
Yeah, that's possible. It takes more power in your brains to
read what it's about.
A bar chart, it's immediately visible which one is higher. So I agree it's okay to use a pie chart with 2 values or one value compared to the total. But sometimes there are even better solutions yet. Sure, compared to that.
So that's about pie charts.
Exaggeration.
Some other things which are actually, last week we did a session in Paris as well, and somebody made a picture of me creating a chart like this. But who of you knows what's wrong with this one?
You have to turn your head to read the labels.
That's one thing.
Right? Yeah.
I can't even read the labels.
Okay, maybe because of the screen.
So the labels themselves aren't really a series; they're just individual slots.
Right.
And so the line, the moving line, the trend line is showing a trend that doesn't actually exist.
That's what we're looking at, or looking for. Something like this, you should always put them, in my opinion at least, on a bar chart. Actually something like, what's next to it? Something like this, because they're just numbers you want to compare, and there's no trend at all. So why are you putting it in online? And
actually, the only purpose of the line would be continuous series, and most of the time there's the time-related series.
Yes, exactly. So that's the grep file and visualization part. But okay, all data we use for this is the AdventureWorks database, which is the default demo database of Microsoft. Just one company who sells you products with a certain price and whatever. Doesn't mean that much. So what we will do is we create a new Power BI report, and of course we start from scratch. But maybe not completely, because I already imported some tables from the SQL database. But we always start with adding new tables, and if we add new tables, we probably want to provide you some new steps, change the data a little bit, compare numbers to each other, change the data type, change column names, whatever you want. And we do that in the query editor of Power BI. So when we jump into the query editor, so we're just going to add one more table in here because we already have 5 of them. We're going to add one more table. So very simple. I think all of you know how to do that. We're just going to go to get data, new source, and then in this case it's an Azure SQL database. So because
actually, while Mark does this, my way to do this was to just copy one of the existing queries and change it, like delete the steps that were already there, except for the source step, and then it has to contain the connection already.
That's also an option. Yeah. But then the first time you have to do this anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And we show this because there are other tips to show here.
Of course. What you'll see here when we make a connection to this Azure SQL database, since this is a related database, we can use direct query as well. And if we do that, we will have a direct connection to the database, and once we open a report, it will query the underlying database. Actually, we never advise anybody to do that, simply because the performance of your report is much slower. And it will have a performance impact on your database itself at the moment you're opening your report. Besides that, you're limited with the things you can do and transform and manipulate your data when you're using direct query. There's not much you can do. That's as well for the calculation stuff in DAX, but even more for Power Query. You can do anything actually.
Yeah.
So we pick import here.
So direct query, never to use direct query is a bit bold, but it's the best practice to not use it. It's like the default. Microsoft puts the default on import on purpose. The cases where you can leverage direct query would be if you really need real-time data. If you're a financial analyst, just entered some transactions and they want to open the report and see them there. Maybe check the balance. So that's a niche case. And also if the data is just too big to fit in memory, that's also a possibility. And
we need the queue for queuing the queue and data services.
Yeah, it's
that's actually the
source.
third option. That's the live connection. So if you're connecting to a SQL database, you get these two. If you connect to analysis services or a existing Power BI data set, you get two options. Live connection and import. And then it's the other way around. For analysis services cubes, you need the live connection.
There's another question.
We will import query data.
So how frequently will import query the data, refresh the data? It's all up to you. If you're using normal Power BI, then you can schedule it for 8 times a day on the times that you like. If you have Power BI Premium, you can do it up to 48 times a day, which is basically every half an hour if you're using 24 hours. And that in the future that will drop the limit. So you can do it every minute if you want.
Yeah. There was another question.
I'm wondering what if a client would like to have the report refreshed like every minute, constantly? Then what should I advise them?
I think even direct query wouldn't work because that's still caching.
No, direct query, it doesn't cache.
A little bit. There are some caching settings.
If you open it,
Where is on the pages cap?
The only reason is to have an API.
But I think if you want a really live report, you should probably look at another solution where you're having some streaming analytics layer in between or something.
Yeah.
Some Azure services in between before you get into Power BI. And it's for sample streaming analytics will provide you the live connection that's continuously updating the data. So then probably you won't see anything of this in Power Query.
And the best thing in this situation is to really ask them why. Why do you want to have it every minute? And then again ask why, like 5 times. Because normally it's not that important to have the data per minute.
So what is actually, if you would like to still use the schedule refresh in Power BI, then what is the, for instance, can you do a schedule refresh every 2 hours? Of course, it depends on the data and how long the data refresh takes itself. Because if it takes 2 hours, then of course then it's going to be a huge issue. But let's say that the data refresh takes less than 1 minute, then can I do it like every 1 hour, the data refresh?
Yeah, you can do it any interval, but
Yeah.
you have a maximum of 8 refreshes per 24 hours.
With a pro license. If you have premium, then it's 40.
Yeah. And remember, you can also trigger a refresh using the API.
Yeah.
So you can have your scheduled refresh, and then it just starts at the given time, and sometimes not the exact time. Keep that in mind. If you have the API, you can maybe check if the data in the source has updated, and when it does, use the API to force your refresh
Yeah.
at the moment you want. And then also the 8 times a day is applied.
So let's continue on with our demo. We want to import a new table, which is sales order detail, and it just gives us a preview. That's totally fine. Click OK, and there it is. It should show up. Yep, there it is. And first thing we're going to do is, when we take a look at these table names, it imported the table name as well from the original source. This is the Azure SQL database. But actually, this is not representing what we like, because it's sales order detail and not sales LT, sales order detail, not readable, fancy DBA name. So let's change this to just simple sales order detail. First thing we do. Next up, what we will see is that all column names which are in there, actually there are a lot of column names, because we just said import complete the complete table. So we're going to look at which queries or which columns we don't need. So there's a lot in here. Oh, here's something which looks a bit weird. Okay, this is the row GUID, which is something which is provided in the SQL, but we don't need this column. This is actually causing a lot of memory, since every row has a unique value, and Power BI on the backend is running the VertiPack engine. The VertiPack engine compresses all data to the unique numbers of values you have in your column. On column base, it will compress. So this row GUID has a unique value for each row, which wouldn't compress at all. So this costs you a lot of memory and also a lot of performance. Since we don't need this column, we're just going to remove it. Just right click and click remove. Best thing of all, Power BI normally follows everything you do and every step you add, step by step, which we will see on the right side. So first we have source, then navigation, and removed columns. Normally, Power BI will just simply import your data set and then follow everything step by step. But since this is a related data source, query folding can be applied. And what query folding does is actually we can see if it is applied by looking at if this functionality is available, view native query. As long as that's available, every step you do will be folded back to the original source, which means that our SQL query, which is executed on the original source, looks like this now. And that original source doesn't include that row GUID. So we just clicked in the interface, remove column for that row GUID, but we will never see it again. It will not be imported into our dataset. And that's the best thing ever, because we don't need that column. We can just click in the interface, make it really accessible for all end users, and we're not going to see that column again. So another thing we want to do is, we see that all the names of the columns look a bit different, and I always forget the name, so help me please.
Oh, it's Pascal casing.
Pascal casing.
Everybody says camel casing, but actually camel casing starts with a lower letter, lower case. Pascal casing is a capital word, and actually we're not using Pascal casing because we're going to define the words with this space.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, you're building your end model, your model for your end users. It's not only helping you when you're creating your reports, your visuals, it will also help to make your model and your end user experience more intuitive and efficient. And there are a lot of features inside Power BI, and they're adding more and more, that leverage your model. And if it's more neatly described, and you delete columns you don't want, and especially these things, how you name stuff, it's really important for those features like Q&A and the insights features and explain the increase, all that AI kind of stuff. Keep in mind that you need to invest your time and attention in your model and the naming in your model. It's really important.
So what we will do, I'm not going to write any piece of Power Query now. Because all other tables are already imported and we provided that step there or done that step there already, I will just copy paste it. And what you will see that I always have my Power Query bar on top, which is an option you can enable in the settings of Power BI.
Can you show where it is?
Of course I can do that. If we simply go to File, Options and Settings, again Options, and then I always have to look where it is. I think it's here at Power Query Editor. Zoom in a bit. And the second option is Display the Formula bar. You can do it here, but there's another place where you can do it, and that is, I think it should be somewhere. Oh yeah, here.
So this might look intimidating at first. You're like, okay, these formulas things, I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
But it really helps you to get familiarized with that programming language, and you'll see that a lot of times a quick edit, you can do it in the formula bar, just press enter and it's done. It's faster than opening the dialog again, changing it and saving it, closing it up.
So I can understand you will probably not write this all of yourself. So luckily it is somewhere on the cheat sheet. There's a link mentioning this trick, and you can just copy paste it from there. So what I will do now, I will copy paste this code, go back to my sales order detail table, and at a right click on my last step, I'll say insert step afterwards.
And remember how the columns look now? So they have capitals, but there's not a space
Let's zoom
in
in a
between.
bit. Yeah.
And with this function,
And we're just going to paste this function in. And as Dave already said, we can just press enter. And there we go. All column names changed at once. Best thing about this is that normally if you change column names, you should do them all one by one manually, and you're actually hard coding your column names in your Power Query code. So if at one time your column name is changing, your query will break. With this piece of code, we didn't mention any column name hard coded. So it will always work actually.
How did it display the ID as both capital and lower?
For which one?
because it recognizes capital and lowercase.
So because there's no lowercase in one statement.
Yeah.
A short question. To remove columns, I don't think so. It's an expect this. So you should use instead of the select columns, because after you have the list, and only these columns will be selected. But with remove columns, then the data model will change, or the table will change, and you will have a new column there.
Yeah, that's true. But also a bit depending on your data source. Because if you say selected columns, you will hard code the column names. And if your column name is changing for whatever reason, it will break again. In this case, this is all, if we take a look at the native query, this is all applied to the native source, so to the SQL database. So if we just click remove columns, it's more or less the same in this case. Because we're still saying selected columns.
The difference is, if I understand you correctly, that with the select columns option, you hard code all the columns that you want, and you're ignoring hard coded all the rest. So a new column in your source table will not pop up in your table, and with this method,
It will be there.
Probably will be there. Yeah, because now we're looking at this code, but it's not saving this code anywhere. This code will be generated automatically at runtime. So when you refresh your data model. So that's the option. If you want new columns to automatically pop up, use this method. If you don't, use your method. It might be the best practice. I agree, but it depends.
Yeah, depends. But still, what you can see that new step we added to change all the column names is still applied to the native source. So actually, when we're running this script and refreshing in the service, we didn't import anything yet up to this point. So let's see if we do a change type, if that will be folded back to the source as well. So in here we have a modified date, for example, but looking at this column, it actually should be only a date because all timestamps are at 12 a.m. So I just want to get rid of that. Of course, you can do some stuff with remove or split column by space or whatever. But let's make it easier and just do a change type in here and say this is only a date. So, come on, it's not that hard. There it is. And still, if you do right click, we still have the native query. So this also will be folded to your data source. This is something you should be really aware of, because the order of your steps may influence up to at which point it will be folded to the native data source. So I always start with first removing everything what I don't need, or selecting what I do need, and always end with my change type, because some change type steps will not be folded to the data source. So I think we're done for the Power Query part, Dave. Did I forget something? No? Okay. And for now we just do a close and apply, and we're going to load this data, this one table. And while this is evaluating, I want to start the Dex Studio, which is an additional tool. Who of you uses Dex Studio? That's good, that's good. Is it already started? Nope. Why not?
It's coming. Wait, it's here, in the middle.
Ah, there it is. Yeah. So with Dex Studio, we can connect to our open Power BI reports. And what I will do first is I'm going to connect to my grep file. And what you will see on the left side is that all tables which we have loaded are in here. And if I expand some of them, you'll see all columns underneath it. But what you will always also see is a lot of these local date table stuff. And the local date tables are generated in memory because Power BI thinks they're smart. They're not. These local date tables will be generated for each column in your data model which has a date or a timestamp. And actually it's creating like a dimensional table. But why not just have one dimensional date table instead of 10, 15, don't know, too much. You can disable this in Power BI. And if I go to the new file here, and again go to options, previously, depending on the version of Power BI you're running, you should disable this in your current file settings here. And in here you can enable or disable the auto-DateTime functionality. Since last update, the June update, you will be able to disable that by default, which is the best thing ever, if you ask me. Because if you have that many local date tables imported in your model, it will blow up your model. If you have just a few small tables in there, it won't be really an issue. Probably you don't even know about it. But if you're importing a lot of data, this can be an issue. But by disabling this functionality, I don't have any date table at all. So I need to create my own date table. Again, I'm not going to bore you with any of that code. Of course, first hit on Google, you will find something like this. Which is...
It's on my GitHub.
Yeah. I don't think you're a first hit on Google, but...
Okay, noted. Challenge accepted.
Okay. So I just copied this Power Query code, and what I will do now is I'm going to create my own date table. And I will do that by adding a new source, which is a blank query, because I already have the code. And because we have a complete script of code now, we are not going to enter this in the formula bar, but I go to Advanced Editor, and in here I replace everything with the code we just copied. So just click Done, and there it is. You see that a lot of steps are applied on the right side, and this date table will be loaded in memory of Power BI and will be generated during your report refresh. So, assuming that everything is already correct, I only need to rename this.
Actually, I would like to take the time. Who has the preference of creating a date table in Power Query? And the other group will be DAX. So Power Query first, no, left. And the rest is then DAX.
May I ask why?
We actually have the date table.
Yeah. That's an easy option, yeah, of course. But you said that you can reference your date column to generate more effectively your min and max.
To make your date table relative to your data, to your date columns in all the tables.
You can do that in Power Query as well.
Okay, but less
easy. Yeah, that's right.
I do agree it's less easy, but it is possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah?
I think there is another option. I think all of you know not personally Marco Russo, and on his blog, he has a blog post on where he shares actually a Power BI template where you can create calendar using this file, Power BI template. So this is also another option to do a
And then
calendar.
what happens then? You generate it?
And then you generate it by using this template, and because for instance my customers want to have like excluded the hobby days. You know, the days
Yeah.
where the worker was not at work because it was a holiday. So then this template has this, you know, so many options. Also fiscal years when there is like crazy when it starts. I don't know, April is normal or January, but then you really can customize your calendar on a huge scale, I think.
Okay, so then it's using DAX to generate the table, right?
Yeah. I actually prefer
I have a question. So what's the difference between using DAX versus M? Why would you use one versus the other?
I always prefer to do it in Power Query, so M, simply because then it will be compressed by the Virtuac engine. If you do it in DAX, it won't be compressed.
Okay.
So that's one thing. I don't know if you've experienced it, but if you're using DAX to create your date table, and you're browsing your file, I click the date table and it will expand, and I'm searching for the month field. And it means in the same time, it's loading the DAX statement of that date table again in DAX formula editor. And that experience, it lowers my end user experience for the developer, of course. The end user will not have this, but for me as the visual creator, it annoys me. So that's for me maybe the most important thing. And I also like things to be pushed down in the hierarchy of the solution. So creating a data table in a SQL source, if that's possible, maybe even better, because then you can reuse it.
Well, that's where mine always comes from, so that's why I'm asking, because I've never done it that way. I've always had a source table to pull it all into.
Yeah. So that's maybe the best option, but it limits you in maybe creativity of loading more years or adding more columns. You will do that in higher stages in your solution. Actually, the thing that maybe my current best practice is using a data flow. Put your Power Query for the data table inside there and reuse the data flow in multiple reports. And you have the reusability and still Power Query.
Okay, so we've generated our date table now, so we again do the close and apply. And it's loading our date table, but we need to do one more thing here, because we generated our default data dimension now ourselves. We need to mark this as our date table. And within the modeling tab in the ribbon, after selecting the table, you can say mark as date table. And then you should get this, yes. And we need to select the column with a unique value, so every row should be a unique value for a date. So that's our date column, and it's validated successfully. Click OK, and now this is our default date table. After having done this, of course, we imported the sales order detail table now in our date table. So we need to create some relationships in order to make it all work. So let's zoom in a little bit. Where is it? Sales order detail. Actually, it's already connected. And that is because one of the settings I always have enabled is that it should be allowed to import your relationships from the original source. So in this case, it imported the relationships from the SQL database. And since there are already relationships in the SQL database, it is connecting. But our date table is not connected yet. And we need to connect that to, where is it? I think the sales order. So let's put it here. And we have our order date or something.
Yeah, it's in the middle.
It's in the middle. Here it is. Order date. And we're just going to drag and drop this onto our date. And there it is. One other best practice we have, because we only want to use our date table for all time-related stuff. On the left side, our order date is still highlighted now. But actually, we want to hide this from our report view. And within the properties pane here, we can just hide this one, because we don't want to see this any longer. If you by mistake pick the wrong column and you will slice somewhere on your report, it may have a different interaction than you're expecting. And actually it cleans up your model to make it better visible. And so that's why we always prefer to hide it. yeah, leave it like this for now. And yeah, what's next, Dave? What should we do? Create
Create
a
measures?
Yeah.
Maybe focus first on the base values. So Power BI has an option.
Question on
Yeah.
the data. If you got multiple dates in your model, do
Yeah.
you reuse the same table or create a new one for each date?
So we will reuse this date dimension. Otherwise, you will end up with somewhat the same as the automatically generated date table. That it will have a new date table for each column. What we've seen in the DAX editor or DAX Studio here. If you create a new one, you will have something like this.
Do you mean, because now we have an order date in the sales orders, there's also a delivery date or due date. You cannot connect those two fields to this same date table. So,
As long as they're in the
Not
same.
active.
non-active.
Yeah.
So you can, because the other one is really for the advanced DAX situations. If
Yeah,
you,
it's two different tables.
If it is in a different table, you should be able to do that with an active relationship.
yeah, so the general practice that I do, and I think Mark as well, is create this date table, and as long as this survives, then use this. All your fact tables, direct them to this date table. Your end users will just find it. You can maybe have, this is sales data, maybe some customer reviews data. It will have a date connected to this same date table. That way, you can create one report page and have one slicer or filter for the month. And everything on the page, whether it's sales or the customer reviews data, it will filter on that same month.
Yeah.
That's the voordeel,
The
the benefit, the advantage if you keep it in one date table in your model.
But you
Yes.
still can copy the date table here, not in M but here in DAX. So, and
Yeah.
then you have two different date options, which is nice sometimes.
Yeah, like I said, if you have an order date and a due date, then the best thing is to create them as separate date tables, because your end user
In M?
wants to select.
In M or in DAX?
It doesn't matter where you create it at. You can copy, maybe you can create a new query which you reference your existing query. So the key thing here is to keep the logic of creating your date table in one place. So don't copy or duplicate your date creating query, because then you will have it in two queries.
Yeah.
So you either reference it or in docs create a reference of this, but yeah, that's not my preference.
No. There was another question on the back.
What is your advice on whether you should create a model for this simple situation or not? Because in this situation we only have one subject, it is a sales. So technically we could just make one simple table and it would all be column compressed. So in fact now we still have the technical keys which are not compressed. So do you advise to make one table for this or really a model if we suppose we are not expecting other things like budgets and stuff?
So actually you're asking if we want to create something Excel lookalike, like one big table with everything in it,
Yeah.
that we join all tables together,
Yeah.
or what we have now like a star schema.
Yeah.
I always prefer star schema.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
two reasons, I think, top of my mind, and maybe others have others. First is your end user. If you keep doing this for all your reports, they will start to learn that you separate things in separate tables, and I think that it will be the best experience for your end users. They will know, okay, I need a month, I'll search for the date table and find the month there. And not in the sales table, and in another report, it's in the HR table, and so that can change. So it makes it easier for your end users.
But
Second,
from a performance perspective, is there a difference, you think?
yeah, I think there is a little bit, because in this case, it has a relationship to use. And if you put it in one, it doesn't. And like you said, it compresses column based, so the end result for the compression will be the same. Not better if you put it in one table, but the same. But then you don't have the relationship, so it will be faster. So from that perspective, it might be a little bit faster, but that's not relevant. It's not significant. And I think the bigger reason to separate this, because there will be more tables in your model. In a situation where you have only this sales report and it stays with one fact table, they're not that many. In our experience, there's always one other table joining and then another table, and you needed to connect to the same dimension tables like date or product or customer.
So and actually, by the way, there's due to the intricate working of the how filtering works, a one-table solution can result to false results, depending on the complexity of the measure. And this can be, if you Google, use the keyword auto-exist and tabular data modeling. And Marco Ferrari and Alberto Russo also blogged about this. It's how the tabular engine works, and depending on this working, the one-table solution can definitely result to false measures. So never use a one-table solution, because until you use or start using some different measures like that they are just using the sum, and if you start counting things, so don't use a one-table solution.
Okay. Well, that's the third reason, and I think it's a really powerful one. If they say you can do it, then we need to follow that.
And I will add to that data redundancy, because I'm coming from actually databases environment. So in databases you have lots of tables, and when you have one table, it's like everything together. But in this case, as you said, in star schema, you have like those dimension tables that they are not that big in size actually. The fact tables, the only, let's say, huge, it can have millions or billions of rows, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another advantage, of course. Yeah, let's continue with creating a first measure.
So, I wanted to mention, Power BI has a quite good option to help you with summarizing your columns. So for the beginner users, it's really powerful. Just, you can now select, we have the total due or the subtotal, and just drag it over to your compass, and it will summarize it. And you can change the default summarization value. Also useful.
And here you can simply change it from sum to average, min, max, count, whatever you want.
This is quite powerful. You can switch it, and it's a new aggregation method. But don't use this. It's okay, but you will run into issues later on. So actually, our best practices for your aggregation values. Hide the base columns and create calculated measures on top of that. So that's what Mark.
So we're going to add a new measure now. And what should we create? Something like.
Along the way, we'll highlight why. And if you don't understand yet why, wait a minute, and hopefully we can explain why.
So we have total sales, which is the sum of total due or something?
No, subtotal, I guess.
Subtotal.
I'm not sure. It's from the
There it is. Just pick
doesn't
this one.
really matter.
It doesn't matter. No. So we create a new measure now, and we just simply did actually the same. We created a sum, and that's all we did. What you will see now that actually it's addressed to the wrong table because it ends up in my address table for some reason. Probably I did select that table. Another thing I want to show you.
You can show how to move it. Some people don't know.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. But besides that, you will see that here is the always first called the table name and then the column we're referring to. Imagine that for some reason it ended up in the wrong table, like it is now. If I remove this this part, so that I remove the table name, you'll see that it doesn't work. It doesn't know where to find this column called subtotal. So this will break my measure. If I'm going to move this measure now, I can do that in the modeling section in the ribbon. Here you see home table, which is now address. It is part of our sales order table, so I'm going to move this. And what you will see that now it works again, simply because it's now has a different home table, and in this home table it can find the subtotal. Still, because you don't know what you will do in the future, we always prefer to call the table name first. So that was a sales order or something. Yeah. Here it is. So always first call the table name, then the column name. Also if it's not needed. Power BI will do this by default anyway, but sometimes if people are writing the DAX code themselves, they will leave it out. Just always add it. It's a small thing to do, but there's a lot of advantages later on. So what Dave already said, there's the default summarization functionality. But now we created a measure, and for example, we have two measures where one is the total sales by date or something, which is one.
We have one date in our model, so that's really helpful. We need to add more. This is always funny.
And the other one is also the same measure, total sales, but then by first product color or something. Oh, probably that doesn't have a relationship. Okay, pick something else.
Yeah, you're on the order level.
We need to
country or customer stuff.
Let's pick this one. Country, region, doesn't matter. Okay, doesn't matter what the visual looks like, we have two visuals. And for some reason our definition of the total sales is changing. If you pick the default summarization functionality, you have to check all your visuals one by one to see if this measure is used and change the definition. Now, because they're both using the same measure.
Hold on, can you demonstrate that? Because there's a slight. It will. You have the option to centralize in a central location change the default summarization. If you have already used that column in visuals, it will not override it.
Yep.
The actually where you have already used it, it will stay in that sum or average, what it was. Can you show it? Because it's really one of the main reasons.
Up front you will be able to change it by default. So if I just selected the subtotal column now, in the top ribbon in here, where I also can say where a measure should be located, two items below you have the default summarization functionality, where I can just select this should always be an average, or always be a minimum, maximum, whatever. So you can change it, but still I prefer to always create a measure where all my logic is in one place.
Can you change it?
Yeah, make it average.
Yeah. And now check out the visual where you use this field.
It's still the same.
No, this is not.
But those two are.
It was the left one, right?
Yeah, but I changed it already. The measure's already in.
Oh. Okay.
But still, what you mentioned.
What I was expecting was there to have the renaming like sum of total sales. It would be fixed on sum, and I changed it centrally to average. That's really annoying, and you don't want that.
So always put it in your measure
to create calculated measures.
Yeah. And if for some reason I'm changing my definition, I can only change, or I can just on one place change this measure to my new definition, and both visuals will have the new definition applied. So what can we do? For example, the product color cannot be red. So we do a calculate.
The product is on the details.
So what else do we do?
Sales orders number lower than 1,000. I'm not sure.
Sales order number. This one? Yeah, why not? Smaller than 1,000.
It doesn't matter what we do.
But you can just apply this new definition on one place, and both will have advantage in there. Oh, probably it works because they're both empty now.
Yeah. So that's the reason too.
Make it 100.
You can change the definition of your DAX calculation at a later moment, and that also happens quite a lot. Your customer will say, "Oh, can you please get rid of the internal orders?"
Or we should only see everything after the 1st of July 2018 or whatever. So
right. Second thing, or third thing is the icon. Small thing, but your end users will see now this icon instead of the epsilon, and I think this is a better icon for calculations.
Yep.
So they will all have that thing, and what we need to do now is hide the base column.
So we can do that in the model view, but of course we can do it here as well by right-clicking it and just hide, and it's gone. What's next?
Naming convention.
Oh yeah, naming convention, of course. Now we just called it total sales, but imagine that we have like 10 other measures which are also based on a currency or whatever. So we always prefer to have up front something like, make it easier for ourselves, dollars. If we just put it on front, all our measures of the same category will be grouped together on the right side in here, because you will see that it now is all the way to the top of this table. So all measures will be grouped together and will be in one place, and all of the same category will be in one place. The other question?
I've heard an idea to make a separate table just to store measures. What do you think about that? Or is it better to keep it in a fact table?
I do that a lot actually, but they told me last week that there is a big difference, so explain.
Yeah, so actually the best option is to keep it in the original table. Last week Eric told us another compelling reason. I forgot, maybe you remember, but my preference is because my end users will have the measure in the table where it expects it. And with Power BI, you can have a calculation inside the dimension table. For instance, count the number of yellow products. I don't want that to be in the sales table because it's about my dimension.
Yeah.
And if you create a sales group, so a group of calculations, maybe we can show the technique so everybody knows what it means. Or let me ask you, who doesn't understand yet what we're talking about? It's okay to raise your hand, we can show it in a minute. Okay. Then you cannot do that more easily. Your end user will have a sales, what's it called, the measure table.
Yeah.
And a measure in the dimension table for products, and that's confusing. Second reason,
the AI stuff.
The AI stuff.
Yeah.
It does not work good, or not even works, if you're using a measure table.
Yeah.
The
For
AI
example,
stuff will expect the calculation in the home table.
For example, AI stuff can be this. If you just double click, then we get the ask a question, and if we just type here total sales, it will recognize the column names and the measure names. And this works, for some reason I don't know why, but it works better if it's located, your measures are located in the original table. So I should be able to just demo this directly.
How much time do we have?
We have
It's 208. So I think like 7 minutes.
So we can just type in here in natural language.
Oh, they're 2:30.
2:30 and now it's 2:08.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. So this is also a feature where it works better. That's the natural language stuff. This is available for your end users on dashboards in the Power BI service, but also for yourself, of course, in Power BI reports. And depending on what kind of way you share your reports and dashboards, it can be available for reports as well for your end user.
We have close communication with product teams with Microsoft, and they're investing a lot in the AI stuff. They have a separate product team dedicated to infusing AI in Power BI. So expect more and more and more of these kind of helpful features, and they work not only best, but they might not work if you're not using the method of putting your calculations in its home.
Yeah. Another thing, which is actually kind of cool about this new, new, it's not really new anymore, this natural language thing. I'm going to do something which you probably not expect from me, but I can also change the type of visual in here. So I can also say a pie chart. And actually it's totally useless in this case, but you can do it.
And the good thing is, if you now deselect this, it's just a normal visual.
It's just a normal visual. You can do everything what you want. But quickly change it back, please, because
in this case it makes sense.
No, because there are no different categories there, so it doesn't make sense at all. But it should make sense. At least it makes more sense, simply because we have an idea of the total number now, and in a pie chart we have no idea at all. So there is a little advantage, but since we only have one category, not really making sense so far. Shall we move on to the
What's next?
background stuff?
Yeah,
Coloring is good, actually. So, by default, Power BI has this ugly green color. Actually, I don't like it.
why don't you like it?
I don't know. It's
I know,
ugly.
because it's green, so it implies.
Oh yeah, if we go that way, yes. It's green. It looks like everything is looking good now.
My living
This
room is
color?
green like this. It's really good.
This one.
Oh, we can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's do that. We're gonna change the color, and in here we have a lot of default colors, but as you said, we want something else. So we're gonna pick a default color and make it ugly, even more ugly. Okay. So now we have something else. And imagine that at some point, marketing is complaining about us because everything needs to be in our corporate identity. Of course, we can do that. So you can change it. Yeah, we can do that. So we can, of course, change all visuals one by one, but we prefer to do it all at one time. And in the top ribbon here, you have theme functionality. So we can switch themes to some default theme, which are already applied. But what you will see, they're all changing, except the one which we changed manually. And that is because we hard-coded somewhat the color which we pick now within that hex formula. This will only change at the moment that I'm going back to data colors and say revert to default. And now, again, it will change by the selected theme. So we actually prefer to never use that custom color functionality and always stick with the ones which are suggested in here. So for example, if I still want to have it in pink, and I'm now switching the theme because I picked one of the default suggested colors, it is changing now because it's not hard-coded. But still, we are limited and not applying our corporate identity. So what we can do is create a theme file ourselves. And a theme file actually looks something like this. It's a JSON file which is generated in this case, but you can hard-code your color, company colors in here. And I can imagine you don't want to do this, simply because if you're missing one bracket or one comma or whatever, it will break and it will not work. So please don't try to do it.
And I don't know these colors. Maybe I can copy paste them from the brand manual from marketing.
Yeah, but even better, just don't try to do it. If we go to PowerBI.tips, which is a really useful site online, they have a theme generator on their website.
The link is on the cheat sheet.
Of course it is. And here we can just, by clicking, generate our new theme. So we have our DataGrillen theme. DataGrillen. And in here we can set some global dataset colors. So for example, everything should be in orange. And then we say add color, and we have something gray or whatever. So we add some colors in here, and doesn't matter what. But besides these colors, you can apply a lot more functionalities in here. For example, your global settings for all your tables, or for all your column charts. They need to be responsive, yes or no. The legend should be shown or not. So a lot of settings for your visuals across your report or across multiple reports can be implemented by default by using your own generated theme.
So that's a best practice from us. If you're finding yourself changing maybe the grid size of your matrix, because the default is a little bit small, right?
Yeah.
Do it in the theme, because then all your matrices will by default have the larger font size.
Yeah. So
not all properties are available here. These guys, the creators of this, they've done their best to find all the properties, but it's manual work by them. They don't have documentation that they can use. So if there's a property in Power BI Desktop that you think, oh, I really want to put this in my theme, just try it out, maybe find on Twitter, maybe contact the product team from Microsoft, like, isn't there a property for this? Yeah. And yeah, you can probably make it work.
They're coming out with a newer version instead of this year. They've just been a bit swamped with other stuff to update it. Because as you said, it takes a lot of time to go through the code and figure out what to update, but there's probably another 50, 60 settings that have been part of the Power BI updates that you can now technically tweak with JSON.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine that we want to have our DataGrillen theme. We just click download now, and there it is. So show me where the thing is. And we're just going to say edit, and we'll see that's actually applied. Okay, it's not really looking the same, so just run a JSON converter, and we have actually generated our JSON ourselves now. So,
and I switch the theme at the parameter of the Power BI report. Example is we have many segments, and each segment has its own color and style. And when I made a Power BI report for the segment A, I will the color of the segment A as a corporate identity, and when I select the report for segment B, I will that the report is in color from the corporate identity from segment B. And can I change it?
Do you want one report?
Yes.
And you want to switch the color? No, that's not possible.
yeah, it's possible. I've written a blog about this where you can add the color in your dimensional table and reuse that.
The conditional formatting of like bars based off the field can be switched out with the hex code via slices.
So probably you cannot change all of your report stuff.
For example, in here I have an example where I just have like 2 bar charts, and with this piece of DEX code, it's actually DEX. I can change that, in this case car brands, that the Kia is always blue and so that's always yellow. So it is doable with DEX, but of course you can get values as well from your dimensional table. Both are described in this book, so if you go to my website you can find it.
Does someone have the default theme in JSON file?
The default theme?
Because
I think you can find them in the theme gallery that Microsoft has. I think you can also find them.
There's a theme.
JSON there.
I'm not sure if the JSON is in there, but on top here you have the default option.
Yeah, and then there's also the theme gallery. That's the one lead that I know of. But if it's not there, then I don't know.
If you convert the PBX file, change it to a .zip, you can actually go into a folder called themes, and there's the JSON files right inside the file.
But that's probably weird.
But that's unsupported.
No. Opening is
Yeah.
saving back is not supported.
Well, yeah, just like make a copy of it, and then just, exactly.
And delete the file afterwards because
Oh yeah, you don't convert it back afterwards.
Yeah. But that's a good thing, yeah.
That's also a good trick. If somebody shares a report with you, there's like images inside and you want to extract them, unzip the report file, the PBX, and then the images are just there as files.
Yeah. So one more thing I really want to show before we're running out of time. What I see a lot happening is people doing something like this, and then I want to have my logo on top. So just pick that minion, doesn't matter. So we have that one on the left top here, and we want to have for example, come on, Power BI. Okay. A line which is separating things for us, where the rotation is 90 degrees. And people are really doing this all the time. And then you copy paste or you create a new page, and then you need to add all this over and over again. Even worse, if you take a look at your selection pane, where you can see all your objects actually, you'll see that there are 2 objects. One is that bar, one is that image, and it's really annoying. It's disturbing you from where it's actually all about. So what we always prefer, and what we mainly do is, and that's the best thing PowerPoint is doing for me during these days, is I create a theme layout kind of thing in PowerPoint. So what I've done is just put here my logo on top, create that bar, and afterwards, even if I want to do that, I can already tell people where my visuals should be. I think it's not really good visible on the screen, but there are 4 gray blocks in here. So I want to separate 4 visuals on this report page. Afterwards, I can just simply export this as an image and assume that we have a new page. So let's do a duplicate and remove these 2. I can just simply go, without clicking a visual on the right side, go to the format pane. A little bit more to the down, you have the page background, and you can add an image. And that's the one I just generated. So it should be here. Oh yeah, it should be a different one. Demo file, base files. Here it is. So don't think that it's not working, because by default Power BI sets the transparency to 100. So move it back and set it to fit. And what you'll see now that actually I do have my default layout already. And now I can just drag and drop all those stuff in here and make it look better, make it easier for myself to separate things from each other. And one of the best features they actually stole from PowerPoint are these red lines when I want to align stuff. Even better, they announced that grouping stuff is coming as well. So I can just group visuals and move them all in one time. That's coming. I don't know when, but they announced that it's coming.
What are your releases?
So now I have my default layout. This can be really useful for the end users because you also see that I have a white space on the left side. So I always prefer to have all my slicers on the left side. So for example, I have a filter for year, which is on the left side. Just make it look a bit better, and it should be a slicer. And just make it like a drop down for now. So here it is. I have a slicer on the left side. And imagine that I want to have another slicer for, don't know, okay. Doesn't matter if it works, we want to have product color as well. So what I will do is create a new slicer. And one of the best things that a lot of people don't know, when I just clicked on new slicer, it will have exactly the same size as the one I created before, in width, not in length, but so if I just click both, now you see that they're exactly the same. So that can be really useful and it saves you a lot of time that you don't have to check all those numbers yourself. So I want to have one for color as well.
So, what is your preference now? Slicers or filters?
That's a good one, but because it's not enabled in this report. So let's turn that on. There's a new option in Power BI where you have a filter pane on the right side of your screen actually. And come on, where is it? I think it's report settings, right?
Yeah. Enable the updated filter pane.
Where do we see that? Oh, here. So just click OK, and there it is. They have integrated a new filter pane in Power BI where you just drag in all your filters. And in that case, you don't need that column on the left side anymore. Still, I prefer to have a few of the slicers on the left side because there is a real big advantage of that one on the right, but I'll come back to that in a second. The most used slicers, where probably the end user is going to interact with it directly when he's opening the report, for example, selecting a year, I want them to be visible directly when he opens the report. So they will be in my left slicer pane. The other ones, I'll prefer to put as much as possible in the one to the right, so the new one, this one. Simply because everything which is on your canvas will be rendered and will be loaded when you're opening the report, and everything which is in the slicer pane is not loaded until you expand it.
The filter pane.
Or the filter pane, yes. So this one. These won't be loaded till you expand the filter pane when you're opening the report.
And additionally, can you put something there and zoom in to the colors? It's actually only loaded if you look at it like this. So if you collapse it.
Already like this, or even better like this. Yeah, this will not be loaded when you're opening your report.
By default, it's opened up, it's expanded, and
but still like this.
Probably you will leave it like that. But now this color, it can be a really long list. If you have like the sales orders and you want to remove the orders of an whole year, that can be something that you put here. The sales order might be a really long list, and you don't want that query to be executed on your model. It's just a little performance thing. One filter like this is not really important, but everything added up, your report can become slow.
Yeah.
The color is all, or the color is red. That will not query all the other options. That will only be queried when you drop down the list. So that's a little bit like a trick. And putting a slicer on your report currently does execute the whole query for every slicer, every time.
So for this one, it will just query all the years which are available in my data dimension at the moment I'm opening my report. Yeah, that's the one, I guess.
Yeah. So, summary. Okay. So in summary, try to use the new filter experience, and then see where you end up. If there's some reason to still use a slicer, do it. That would be my starting from now on.
Yeah.
I do want to mention one personal important tip. When you're creating reports, try to have versioning on your files. That's not so easy if you're using just a laptop. How do you version your files? if you have a company account and you're having OneDrive in your company, save your report in the OneDrive location that's on your laptop. So Mark is showing on the left, he has a Macaw and a OneDrive Macaw. That one is the one that's SharePoint sites and Teams.
Teams. Yeah, yeah.
That's actually the best thing. How do you get this here? In SharePoint there's a sync button. Click it and it will show it here. And not all files will be downloaded by default, only the ones that you use. So now these are all green check marks because Mark uses them all. But you can say, don't save this on my laptop.
Yeah, for example, if I disable this right now.
Yeah. And now, if you open up a file here and you save it, just in Power BI Desktop, a new version of the file will be uploaded to the cloud, and you can check out the history of all your individual saves and restore one of them. So that saves a lot of work, and sometimes you just forget. You're in the focus. You created 2 hours long. You're in the docs stuff. You forget to save or copy and paste your report file. It's not necessary if you do this.
Yep, that's true. So since we only have a few minutes left, of course, we need to show this one. But besides that, I want to have some room for more questions, of course. And we need to pick a winner.
Yeah.
3 minutes. So, are there any more questions?
Regarding the layout file?
Yeah.
Regarding the layout file, you mentioned using a PowerPoint. I have users which have 3 kinds of screens. We got big screens, small screens, middle-sized screens. Even the ratio, the aspect ratio is...
You mean the size of screen, the layout or the pixel layout of the canvas? Yeah.
Does that affect the layout, or is it just the way that you use a full screen or the normal view? There's some kind of trick there. Does it affect? Do you know about situations where that PowerPoint slide is just not working because it is a picture?
You can make the picture smaller as well if you want to.
Yeah, but
now there's one situation. Generally, no, it will just scale. But on mobile, you have the option to create a mobile view, and then it goes to portrait mode, and that's a complete different view, and your background image will be shown there as well. Currently, you cannot say in report view, hide my background, and it will not make it like really small. It will skew it, so it's really ugly. So unfortunately, if you're using the mobile view, you cannot really use the background image feature.
Yeah, because I'm not a designer at all, but I have designers now that say don't use the PowerPoint version, and they are still using a layout which has, let's say, a blue bar and slices on top of the blue bar. And what happens is that if you click beside the blue bar or beside the slicer, it definitely goes wrong because then the blue bar appears on top.
Yeah.
And well, so I think then switch to the PowerPoint. There's absolutely no issue with that because then we are going to change a lot of files.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
All right.
I still prefer to use PowerPoint, even if there's a different resolution of the screen. I should suggest to create that same resolution into PowerPoint as well, and have a new background in that case. So there was one question there.
Yeah, he was first.
Okay.
If you use SharePoint for versioning, you don't have the possibility to comment your versions.
That's true, but not everybody has the advantage of having DevOps or whatever, or DevOps license. For some clients, we're just checking in our Power BI files into DevOps, but still it's a manual approach, and if you do it with SharePoint or OneDrive, it will be done automatically. So yeah, fair point. You cannot comment what you changed or whatever. But I think it's still better than copy-pasting your files all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Keep asking questions, but in the meantime, I will give this to one of the audience, and maybe you can give it to another.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you had some really good questions. I hope you like the Power BI. You had a question.
I have one more actually.
Just give. Well, okay. Is there any solution for the archiving?
For archiving?
Yeah.
What? I didn't.
Archiving.
Archiving.
Archiving, just to archive the data. Well,
So you want to save the state of the data? The short answer is no, only in Power BI. If you're only using Power BI, that's not possible. So you need to store that data somewhere, and then you can load the snapshots and the current data.
I need to solve it somewhere outside.
Yeah, there might be some tricks to do it, but it's a long answer, and the easy answer is no. Okay.
Any other questions?
Is it okay to ask one question?
Yes, sure.
A question I got in the past is, the office got some big screen in the corner, and they want to have a Power BI report that keeps refreshing itself.
Yeah.
You discussed refreshing earlier, but can that be done in some way?
The new Power BI viewer app, or whatever it's called, I think it's a mobile app actually, which you can download in the Windows Store. That does have functionality that is continuously running through your pages in a separate time frame, like 5 seconds, or every 5 seconds switches the page. But I think in that case you will need direct query or something, because you want the data to be refreshed as well.
I can use some browsers and just pull for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the TV can have it has a Chrome browser or something. There's plugins, extensions for Chrome that can auto refresh. And there's an option in the future coming, if you have direct query in your report, you can set the trigger of the refresh like an interval of 5 seconds. And at the Business Application Summit, they demonstrated it with a race car and with the report next to it. And they didn't touch the report, they didn't press F5 in Power BI Desktop, but it's still updated using this new feature. And I think that's coming within the next 1 or 2 releases.
Okay. You asked some pretty good questions as well. So.
How do you handle multiple languages? Let's say for labels in Power BI?
We'll talk about that as well.
Support.
Yeah. Let me check that out.
So,
that's a good one.